The will nobody expected. The clock inside the Ward estate ticked like a heartbeat. Everything in that mansion, marble floors, velvet drapes, the air itself felt frozen in time since Evelyn Ward took her last breath 3 days ago. Her son, Daniel Ward, stood before the grand fireplace, jaw clenched, staring at the portrait of his mother. "She always loved this damn place more than us," he muttered. His sister, Clara, didn't look up from her phone. She was this place. The company, the estate, the name, everything revolves around her. Now it's finally ours. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Don't sound so sure." The lawyer's black Mercedes pulled into the driveway. Every conversation died. Servants straightened their coats. Even the air grew heavy. Everyone knew what this day meant, the reading of Evelyn Ward's will. Clara brushed a strand of hair from her face, smirking. "She adored you more, but I handled her for years. Let's see who she actually loved." He didn't respond, but deep down, something in him itched, like his mother had left behind more than just property or stocks. Evelyn never did anything without purpose. Inside the study, the lawyer, Mr. Langford, opened a worn brown envelope. As per the final testament of Evelyn Ward, dated 6 months before her passing. Clara leaned forward, pretending to be calm. Daniel folded his arms. Langford continued, "To my beloved son, Daniel Ward, I leave the vintage car collection and the Ward townhouse in Manhattan." Daniel nodded silently. "And to my daughter, Clara Ward, I leave the jewelry, the Paris apartment, and the Ward investment subsidiary." Clara's lips curved upward, as expected. But then Langford's tone shifted. "However, the Ward Foundation, all remaining liquid assets, real estate holdings, and controlling shares of Ward Enterprises are to be transferred—" He paused. "To the Hale Trust." The room fell silent. Clara blinked. "What the hell is the Hale Trust?" Langford adjusted his glasses. "It appears to be a private entity registered under Evelyn Ward's authority. No public details available." Daniel's face hardened. You mean she gave everything to a trust none of us knew existed?" Langford nodded. "That's correct." Clara's voice cracked. "She can't do that. That's impossible." Langford looked at her coldly. "Mrs. Ward could do whatever she pleased. She built an empire from ashes. She didn't need permission then, and she doesn't now." Daniel's phone buzzed. A single message appeared from an unknown number. "If you want answers about the Hale Trust, come to 43 Maple Drive. Alone." He froze. Clara noticed the look in his eyes. "Who's that?" He locked the screen. "Nobody." Later that evening, Daniel sat in his black Bentley, parked in front of a weathered house at 43 Maple Drive. No lights, no guards, just silence. He stepped inside. Dust floated through beams of moonlight. A faint piano melody echoed from a record player, the same tune his mother used to hum. A voice spoke from the dark. "You shouldn't have come here, Daniel." He turned sharply. A woman in her 60s stepped out of the shadows. Evelyn Ward's former assistant, June Harlow. "You worked for her," Daniel said. "You know about the trust." June smiled faintly. "I worked with her, not for her. Evelyn didn't trust easily, but she trusted me with something you never understood. Her silence." "What the hell does that mean?" June walked to an old cabinet, pulling out a sealed box. "It means she planned this long before either of you started fighting over what she built." She slid the box toward him. "Inside you'll find why she left everything to the Hale Trust." Daniel hesitated before opening it. Inside lay a folder, an old photograph of his mother standing beside a young man, someone who looked eerily familiar. "Who is he?" June exhaled. "Your brother." Daniel's world tilted. "That's a lie. We don't have a brother." June's expression didn't change. Not by blood, but by heart. Evelyn met him 25 years ago, an orphan she sponsored through her foundation. She saw herself in him. When your father betrayed her, she rewrote everything, including her will. Daniel's voice trembled. "You're saying she left her fortune to a stranger?" June corrected softly. "Not a stranger. Her redemption." That night Daniel couldn't sleep. The mansion, once his fortress, felt like a cage. He remembered how his mother used to sit by the piano, humming that same melody. He used to ignore her, lost in his own ambitions. Now her silence screamed louder than any word. The next morning, the family gathered again. Reporters surrounded the gates, cameras flashing. Clara emerged in sunglasses, fury etched on her face. "She's humiliated us. We'll contest this. No court would allow her to gift a multi-billion-dollar company to some nobody." Daniel didn't reply. He just stared at his mother's portrait, her calm, knowing smile. When he turned to leave, Langford stopped him. "There's something else. Mrs. Ward left a private letter addressed only to you." Daniel opened the sealed envelope. Inside was a single line written in his mother's elegant handwriting. "If you want to know who I truly was, stop chasing what I owned." Hours later, Daniel found himself driving back to Maple Drive. The photograph haunted him. The man beside his mother had his father's eyes. He confronted June again. "You said she changed everything after my father's betrayal. What happened?" June poured 2 cups of tea. "Your father transferred company funds offshore. Evelyn discovered it. She didn't expose him. She built her own network quietly. She created Hale Trust as a backup empire. The name Hale, her mother's maiden name." Daniel frowned. "So the trust wasn't for the orphan?" June's eyes flickered. "Oh, it was. He runs it now. She trained him for years while you two fought over who would inherit her empire." Daniel clenched his fists. "She replaced us." June shook her head. "No, she tested you, and you both failed." That night, a courier arrived at the Ward mansion. A thick legal document was dropped at the gate. Clara tore it open and froze. "Notice effective immediately, all Ward Enterprise accounts and assets are frozen under Hale Trust jurisdiction pending internal audit." "She's still controlling us from the grave." Daniel didn't respond. He looked toward the horizon where the city lights glimmered and whispered, "No, Clara, she's teaching us."
Echoes of the past. The next morning came without warmth. Daniel sat alone in his mother's old garden, the one she used to tend herself, a place she called the last honest soil. The tulips were still blooming, even though no one had watered them since her death. He picked up her gardening gloves from the bench, small, clean, untouched. He whispered, "What are you trying to tell me, Mom?" Behind him, footsteps crunched the gravel. Clara, eyes swollen from anger and no sleep, tossed her phone on the table. "The media's having a feast. Ward heiress loses billions to mystery trust. Great headline, huh?" Daniel didn't answer. He just stared at the gloves. "You think this is funny?" she snapped. "You're calm because you think she left you something I don't know about, don't you?" He looked up. "No, I think she left both of us a lesson." Clara scoffed. "Spare me the poetic crap, Daniel. I want my money." Before Daniel could respond, a distant melody drifted from the house, the same piano tune again. They turned toward the study. The door was ajar, the old record player spinning, but no one had been in that room since the funeral. On the piano sat another envelope, thick, cream-colored, a note in Evelyn's familiar handwriting. "For whoever still listens." Daniel picked it up carefully. Inside was an old cassette tape labeled 1998, The Beginning. The tape. When Daniel played it, Evelyn's voice filled the room, soft, younger, alive. "If you're hearing this, it means I'm gone. And if you're angry, it means you didn't really know me." Clara's jaw tightened. "You always thought the company made us rich, but it was never the money. It was the people who built it, the ones your father forgot and I remembered." The tape crackled, then shifted to another moment. Laughter, music, the faint hum of a gala. "That night, 25 years ago, I met a boy who cleaned glasses at our charity ball. He had nothing, but his eyes reminded me of everything I'd lost." Clara frowned. "She's talking about that orphan, the one from June's story." Daniel stayed quiet, listening. "His name was Adrian Hale. He didn't know it then, but I'd already decided he'd be part of something greater, something untouchable." The tape stopped abruptly. Daniel looked at the label again. The beginning. "There must be more," he said. "Check the study." They searched drawers, old files, her cabinet, dust-covered folders, invoices, faded letters, until Daniel found one marked Hale Foundation, Founding Records. Inside, a photo of Evelyn with a young man, not much older than him, shaking hands beside a sign that read Hale Education Trust. Clara whispered, "She built a foundation for him?" "No," Daniel murmured. "She built it for herself, to fix what she couldn't with us." Flashback, 1998, The Betrayal. Story transitions smoothly into Evelyn's perspective. Her memory unfolds. Evelyn Ward was 42 when she found the first forged document. Her husband, Richard Ward, had quietly shifted millions in company funds to a shell corporation overseas. She confronted him that night. No screaming, no tears. Just the truth between them, like broken glass. "You've built an empire on deceit, Richard." "Don't make this dramatic, Evelyn. It's just business." "It's theft." He laughed bitterly. "You wouldn't understand. You play charity, I play power." That was the night Evelyn stopped being her partner and started being her competition. She contacted a small law firm, Langford and Associates, and started drafting something Richard couldn't touch. The Hale Trust. She named it after her mother's side, people who had nothing but survived everything. If Ward Enterprises ever fall, the heart of it must live elsewhere, she told the lawyer. "You're creating a shadow empire." "No," she said. "I'm saving my legacy from my own family." Back in the present, Daniel sat frozen, reading those same lines in her handwriting. Clara stormed to the window. She didn't save her legacy, she hid it. "Maybe she was protecting it from us," Daniel replied quietly. "Us?" Clara spun around. "You think she was right? She made us beg for attention our whole lives." Daniel's tone darkened. "And we gave her reasons to." She slapped him. The echo filled the study. They both stood there, years of resentment collapsing between them like shattered glass. The letter to Adrian. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep again. He went through his mother's desk one last time. Beneath the bottom drawer lining, he found another sealed envelope. To Adrian Hale. He opened it. "You were the son I had no courage to keep close, the one who saw me not as a name, but as a person. If the Wards destroy what I built, you'll know when to act. Until then, stay invisible." Daniel read it twice. His chest tightened. So it was true. Evelyn had built everything around this hidden heir. Meeting the ghost. The next day, Daniel drove again to 43 Maple Drive, the house that had become the doorway to secrets. But this time, someone else was there. A man in his mid-30s, sharp suit, calm eyes, standing beside a black Range Rover. He turned when Daniel approached. "You're Evelyn's son, and you must be Adrian." The man nodded slowly. "I was told you'd come." They walked inside. The same house, same record playing, the same melody Evelyn used to hum. Adrian poured tea. "She said you'd be angry. I think you know her better than her own children." "I don't think," Adrian said quietly. "I do. I worked beside her for 15 years. Every project you two ignored, she built them through me. Every dollar she saved, she put it in the trust. For the foundation. For people who'd never have what we did. You're saying she gave away everything we owned for charity?" "No." Adrian looked at him calmly. "She gave it back to where it came from." A voice recording played on Adrian's phone, Evelyn again. "If my children ever hear this, tell them I wasn't trying to punish them. I was trying to protect what love had left. I built everything to keep them safe, but I forgot to teach them why it mattered." Daniel closed his eyes. For the first time, he felt something he hadn't felt since she died. Grief, not anger. The farewell dinner. A week later, Langford invited both families, the Wards and Adrian, to a private dinner at the estate. The table was set for 5, but one chair remained empty. Evelyn's. Langford stood at the head. Mrs. Ward prepared one final statement to be read today, her last instruction. He unfolded the letter. The Hale Trust will remain untouched. However, both my children are invited to serve as co-trustees under Adrian Hale's guidance. If they choose greed, they lose. If they choose purpose, they gain what I built, not what I owned. Clara stood abruptly. I'm not serving anyone. She stormed out. Daniel stayed. Adrian turned to him. What about you? Daniel looked at the empty chair. She spent her life protecting what she loved. Maybe it's time I do the same. Outside, rain began to fall, soft, rhythmic, almost forgiving. Daniel whispered to himself, She didn't leave us behind. She left us a map. Later that night, Daniel walked through the halls of the estate. He stopped at the portrait again, Evelyn's calm, proud face. Only now did he notice something new. In the corner of the frame, faintly etched letters, H.T. For the ones who listen. He smiled sadly. I'm listening now, Mom. And somewhere in the distance, the record player clicked, restarting that same haunting melody. The music that began everything and still refused to end.
Arc 3. The Silence Before the Storm. The morning sun barely touched the Ward estate, but tension already choked the air inside. The once silent mansion now buzzed with voices, lawyers, auditors, and reporters, swarming around like vultures over a dying empire. Daniel Ward stood at the balcony, a cup of untouched coffee in hand, staring at the iron gates. The Hale Trust had seized control of everything, and the board demanded answers he didn't have. His sister Clara stormed in. Her makeup couldn't hide the sleepless nights beneath her eyes. This is a nightmare, Daniel. Our accounts are frozen, our staff quitting one by one. What are you doing about it? Daniel didn't turn around. Maybe we should have listened to her while she was alive. Clara slammed her hand on the table. Don't start with that emotional nonsense. She betrayed us, Daniel. Everything she owned she gave to some outsider running her secret trust. That's not a mother. That's manipulation. He finally looked at her. Or maybe it's punishment for what we became. Clara glared. Speak for yourself. Suddenly, the butler entered quietly. Sir, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent. Daniel frowned. Who? The butler hesitated. Mr. Hale. Silence. Daniel and Clara exchanged stunned looks. The man they'd only heard of in whispers, the mysterious heir to their mother's empire, was standing downstairs. The man was in his mid-30s, tall, composed, dressed in a simple gray suit. No guards, no arrogance, just calm eyes that studied every inch of the mansion like he'd known it his whole life. Mr. Ward, he said softly, I'm Nathan Hale. Clara's tone turned sharp. So you're the man who stole our legacy? Nathan smiled faintly. If it's stolen, then your mother was the thief. She built Hale Trust long before any of us knew it existed. Daniel crossed his arms. Why are you here? Nathan reached into his coat and placed a sealed envelope on the table. Because she wanted this delivered to you after the audit began. Daniel opened it slowly. Inside was a single handwritten note from his mother. The truth is heavier than wealth. Handle it carefully. Beneath the note was an old photograph. Evelyn standing beside a younger Nathan, both smiling in front of a half-constructed orphanage. Clara snatched it. So she used our money to play saint? Nathan's voice stayed calm. No, she used her pain to create something she could trust. When your father betrayed her, she started Hale Trust to protect what mattered most. People she believed deserved a chance. Daniel clenched his jaw. And you were one of them. Nathan nodded. Yes. And she wanted both of you to be part of it too. But she said you were too blinded by the crown.
That night, Daniel sat in his study, the letters spread before him, the sound of rain echoing against the glass. He remembered his mother's quiet moments, the way she'd pause before speaking, how her gaze drifted out windows as if she was looking beyond time itself. He had mistaken her silence for coldness. Now he realized it was control. She'd been orchestrating every piece of this empire while the rest of us fought for scraps. Clara burst into the room, phone in hand. "The board called an emergency meeting tomorrow. They're considering removing us from all management roles because Hale Trust has majority control." Daniel rubbed his temples. Maybe that's for the best. Clara's voice cracked. "You're giving up? You're just going to hand everything over to some stranger and her ghost?" He looked at her. Tired, broken. "She wasn't trying to destroy us, Clara. She was trying to show us who we became." Clara's breath hitched. "You sound like her." Daniel whispered. "Maybe that's the point." The next morning, chaos exploded. News headlines screamed, "Ward Empire in crisis. Secret heir controls fortune." Paparazzi filled the gates, flashes bursting like wildfire. Nathan Hale arrived with a team of accountants, escorted by security. Clara stood at the staircase, her fury in her voice. "You think you can just walk in here and take over?" Nathan looked up at her. "This isn't about taking. It's about continuing her legacy. She built Ward Enterprises to save others, not to feed your ego." Clara's face twisted. "You talk like you knew her better than her own children." Nathan met her eyes calmly. "I did." The room froze. Daniel stepped forward. "Enough. Everyone out." When the room cleared, Daniel faced Nathan. "You said she left this for a reason. So tell me, what's the real reason for the Hale Trust?" Nathan studied him. "The Hale Trust is not just a bank account, Daniel. It's a living project. She funded hospitals, shelters, schools, all under your radar. And she left something unfinished." Daniel's heartbeat quickened. "What unfinished?" Nathan placed a file on the desk. Inside were documents about an offshore property network and blueprints of something called the Haven Project. She was building a city, Nathan said. A safe community funded entirely from her private investments. A place where no one would ever be abandoned again. Daniel stared at the blueprints. "And she kept this from us?" Nathan nodded. "Because she wanted you to find it, not inherit it." That night, Clara's rage boiled over. She met with her attorney in secret. "If we can prove that the Hale Trust was created under emotional duress while she was mentally unstable, then we can challenge it." Clara's eyes gleamed. "Do it. I don't care what it takes." But as she signed the papers, her hand trembled. A faint flashback flickered in her mind. Her mother sitting on the bed, weak from illness, whispering, "Don't turn this house into a battlefield." She blinked the memory away. "She left me no choice." The next day, a storm brewed, literally and figuratively. Inside the courtroom, Daniel and Clara sat on opposite sides. Nathan stood quietly beside his counsel. The judge read through Evelyn's will and supporting documents. It appears Mrs. Ward had all her faculties during the signing. The trust's creation was legally sound. Clara slammed her hand on the table. "She wasn't of sound mind. She was obsessed." Nathan's lawyer spoke calmly. "Obsessed with helping people. There's a difference." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Daniel looked at his sister, her face twisted by desperation. He whispered, "This isn't what she wanted, Clara. You're just proving her right." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't stop. "She took everything from us." Daniel replied softly, "No, we took everything from her first." The judge cleared his throat. "Until further evidence, the Hale Trust remains the legal controlling entity." The gavel hit the wood. Case adjourned. As they left the courtroom, lightning flashed across the sky. Nathan turned to Daniel. "The storm's just beginning, but so is the truth."
The storm outside didn't end that night. Thunder rolled across the city like Evelyn Ward's voice, refusing to die down, a reminder that she was still orchestrating everything, even from the grave. Inside the marble halls of the Ward estate, Daniel sat alone in his mother's old study, staring at the same portrait that once felt like judgment. Now it felt like a challenge. Nathan Hale's words echoed in his head. The storm's just beginning, but so is the truth. The tapes. The next morning, a courier arrived at the estate, again. Another package, no sender, just Daniel's name. Inside was an old cassette tape marked in Evelyn's handwriting. "To my children, when you're ready to listen." Daniel froze. Clara walked in, mascara smudged, her anger replaced by exhaustion. "What now? Another message from the grave?" she scoffed. He didn't reply. He slid the tape into the recorder. A crackle, then her voice filled the room, warm, calm, unwavering. "If you're hearing this, you've already learned about the Hale Trust, but you haven't learned why." Clara folded her arms, rolling her eyes, but Daniel leaned forward like a child listening to a bedtime story. "I spent my life building walls to protect what I loved. But the higher I built them, the lonelier I became. The trust wasn't about money. It was about legacy, one not poisoned by greed. Every dollar in that trust came from investments your father never knew about. Offshore accounts? No. Community funds. The Hale Project was designed to rebuild lives, not destroy families." Daniel's heartbeat quickened. "The Hale Project?" Evelyn's voice continued. "You wanted control, Daniel. You wanted power, Clara. But I wanted peace. That's why I chose someone who reminded me what purpose looks like." Clara slammed the table. "She's talking about him, isn't she? That fraud she called a son." Daniel didn't move. His eyes were wet. "She's talking about forgiveness." The missing file. As the tape ended, Nathan entered quietly, holding a manila folder. "I think I can fill in the rest," he said softly. Inside the folder were documents, not of companies, but of names. Hundreds of them. Children, families, survivors, all listed under the Haven Initiative. Nathan spoke quietly. "She used her empire to fund this. Education, housing, hospitals. That's where the money went. The Hale Trust isn't hiding her fortune. It is her fortune." Clara's face twisted. "You mean she gave our inheritance to strangers?" Nathan looked at her. "No, she gave it back to the world she took it from." Daniel's heartbeat trembled. He flipped through the pages, names of kids his mother had sponsored, families she rebuilt, towns she helped recover after disasters. "She was building something bigger than us," he whispered. Nathan nodded. "And she left one last thing for you both. A choice." The choice. That evening, all three stood in the Hale Trust headquarters, a minimalist office Evelyn designed but never visited publicly. In the center of the room stood a locked safe. Langford, the lawyer, arrived holding a silver key. Mrs. Ward instructed this to be opened only when both her children stood together. Clara hesitated. Daniel looked at her. "Please, let's just hear her out." Reluctantly, she placed her hand beside his. The lock clicked open. Inside lay a handwritten note, Evelyn's pearls, and a sealed envelope labeled "Final Directive." Daniel opened it. His mother's voice seemed to whisper with every word. "The empire I built was never meant to end in greed. Daniel, you were born to lead. Clara, you were born to feel. But both of you forgot to love. The Hale Trust will remain under Nathan's care until you prove you can create, not just consume. I've left each of you a key to build your own foundation. The wealth I hid isn't in this safe. It's where your intentions take you next." Clara's lips trembled. "She left us nothing?" Langford smiled faintly. "On the contrary, she left you freedom and a fortune waiting to follow it." Daniel frowned. "What does that mean?" Langford opened his briefcase and revealed a final document, the Haven Legacy Clause. If Daniel and Clara Ward establish a project that sustains 1,000 lives independently, the Hale Trust would transfer complete control of its assets to them. Clara's eyes widened. "She's made it a test?" Daniel smiled faintly. "She always did." Clara's breakdown. Later that night, Daniel found Clara in the garden, the same spot where their mother used to read every morning. Clara sat in the rain, mascara running, clutching the pearls. "She hated us," she whispered. "She spent her life judging us, and now she's still controlling us." Daniel knelt beside her. "She didn't hate us. She just stopped trusting us." She looked up, broken. "Then why give him everything?" He sighed. "Because he earned it." She laughed bitterly. "You sound like her." Daniel looked towards the sky. "Maybe that's not a bad thing anymore." Lightning flashed. For the first time, Clara didn't argue. The last confession. Days later, Daniel met Nathan one last time at Evelyn's grave. A simple headstone. No marble, no gold. Just her name, and the words, "I gave back what was never mine." Nathan placed a small envelope on the grave. "She wrote this for you. Her last confession." Daniel opened it. "I wasn't perfect, Daniel. I was afraid. Of losing you, of losing myself. But when I met Nathan, I saw the boy you used to be. Curious, kind, fearless. I wanted you to see him too. That's why I left the world this way. Not to punish you, to remind you what love looks like when it costs everything." Daniel's tears fell on the page. Nathan placed a hand on his shoulder. "You still have time to make her proud." Daniel nodded slowly. "We all do." The revelation. 1 week later, a televised press conference stunned the business world. Daniel and Clara stood beside Nathan under the banner, "The Hale Trust Expands," introducing the Ward Hale Foundation. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed. Daniel stepped up to the mic. His voice was calm, clear, steady. "My mother built an empire to protect what she loved. We lost our way trying to inherit it, but we've learned. Legacy isn't what you take, it's what you give." The crowd silenced. Then slowly, applause filled the room. Genuine, emotional, cathartic. That night, Daniel returned to the mansion one last time. He walked through every hallway, every memory. The air didn't feel heavy anymore. He stopped by the piano, pressed one key. The melody Evelyn used to hum.
From today, the Ward Hale Foundation will fund hospitals, schools, and shelters across the country. My mother didn't leave us money. She left us purpose. The crowd went silent. Then, slowly, applause filled the room. Genuine, emotional, cathartic. That night, Daniel returned to the mansion one last time. He walked through every hallway, every memory. The air didn't feel heavy anymore. He stopped by the piano, pressed one key. The melody Evelyn used to hum. Clara joined him quietly, resting her head on his shoulder. Nathan stood at the doorway smiling. Outside, the storm had cleared. As dawn broke, golden light filled the estate. Daniel looked at his mother's portrait one final time and whispered, "You were right, Mom. The empire wasn't yours to leave. It was ours to build." Fade out. The morning light washed softly over the Ward estate, the first time it felt alive in months. The air was calm, no reporters, no tension, just the quiet hum of peace Evelyn had always wanted. Daniel stood by the window, sipping black coffee, staring at the gardens where his mother used to sit every morning with her journal. The piano's last note still lingered in his mind. He thought it was over. He thought the story had ended with redemption, but fate had one last message to deliver. The hidden drawer. Langford, the family lawyer, arrived unannounced. "Daniel," he said with his usual composure, "there's something I missed." Daniel frowned. "Missed? After all this?" Langford placed a small wooden box on the table. "It was found behind your mother's piano drawer, labeled simply, 'The Last Letter.'" Daniel hesitated. His pulse quickened. Clara joined him quietly, curiosity flickering behind her cautious eyes. The box opened with a soft click. Inside lay an ivory envelope sealed with Evelyn's gold insignia, the Ward crest. Clara whispered, "She had another message." Daniel nodded. Maybe her final one.
He unfolded the letter. His mother's handwriting danced across the paper. Elegant, calm, deliberate. Evelyn's letter, voiceover, emotional core. My dearest children, if you've come this far, it means you've found your own truth, not the one I left behind. That's all I ever wanted. When I built this empire, I wasn't trying to create wealth. I was trying to build a shield. Your father's betrayal taught me one thing. Love without purpose can destroy everything it touches. I wasn't angry with you, Daniel, when you left to chase power. I was heartbroken that you thought you needed it to be worthy of me. And Clara, you weren't weak. You were protecting yourself the only way you knew how, by pretending not to care. But caring is not a weakness. It's what holds the world together. Daniel stopped reading for a second. His eyes glistened. Clara's lips trembled. He continued, The Hale Trust wasn't meant to exclude you. It was meant to prepare you, to make you see that money can buy control, but only love can buy peace. You think Nathan replaced you, but he didn't. He reminded me of who I was before the world turned me cold. He reminded me of you, both of you. And that's why this letter isn't my goodbye, it's your beginning. The key. As Daniel reached the last page, a small metal key fell from between the folds. Clara picked it up. What's this? Langford adjusted his glasses. That key matches a storage vault under the Hale Foundation building. It was never listed in any document. Daniel looked at Clara. One last secret. They drove together through the quiet city streets. The world outside moved on, billboards, people, traffic, but for them, it felt like time had stopped. At the Foundation's archives, an attendant guided them to a vault door marked H09. Daniel inserted the key. The lock turned. Inside was a single object, a leather journal embossed with the initials E.W. The journal. Daniel opened it carefully. Inside were handwritten entries spanning decades, pieces of Evelyn's soul. Each page told a story. Her discovery of her husband's betrayal, her sleepless nights wondering if her empire was worth the loneliness, the day she met Nathan and saw the same fire in his eyes that Daniel once had, and the moment she decided to rewrite her will. One passage stood out. They think this fortune is about control, but it's about correction, giving back to the world what greed stole from it. One day, Daniel will understand that the truest inheritance is conscience. Clara exhaled shakily. She was never protecting herself, she was protecting us. Daniel closed the journal, voice breaking. She didn't leave us anything physical because she was leaving us everything spiritual. The twist. As they prepared to leave, Daniel noticed something tucked inside the back cover, a sealed envelope addressed to Nathan Hale. He handed it to him later that evening. Nathan hesitated before opening it. Inside were just 2 lines. Nathan, you were never meant to inherit my world. You were meant to rebuild it. If you ever doubt yourself, remember, I saw my son in you. Evelyn Ward. Nathan's voice cracked. She saw me as her son? Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder. You were. In every way that mattered. For the first time, all 3 of them, Daniel, Clara, and Nathan, shared a silence that wasn't awkward or heavy. It was peaceful. Healing. Full circle. Weeks later, Daniel and Clara stood at the grand reopening of the Ward Hale Foundation headquarters, now rebuilt as an open community space, with Evelyn's portrait at the entrance. Clara spoke softly during the ceremony. For years, we thought legacy was measured in numbers, but it's measured in hearts. Our mother didn't build an empire for herself. She built it so others could rise. Daniel added, she taught us that forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It rebuilds it. Applause filled the hall. Reporters captured every word, but Daniel barely noticed. His eyes lingered on the portrait, her soft, knowing smile frozen in light. The true twist. Later that night, Daniel returned home one last time. He sat by the piano, the same one his mother played. As he touched the keys, a soft chime echoed, and a hidden panel beneath the piano popped open. Inside was a small jewelry box. Inside that, a tiny flash drive. He plugged it into his laptop. A video file appeared, myfinaltruth.mp4.
He pressed play. Evelyn appeared on the screen, sitting in that same chair, her eyes calm, her smile tender. "If you found this, then my plan worked. I knew you'd only listen once the world stopped spinning around you. The Hale Trust wasn't just about helping others, it was about saving us. Every donation, every project, every scholarship, they were all tied to the Ward legacy. You were never cut out of it. You were the final step. When you rebuilt it, you inherited it all. Congratulations, my son. The empire is yours, if you choose to share it." The video ended. Daniel sat frozen, tears running freely down his face. Clara walked in behind him, eyes wide. "What did she say?" Daniel smiled faintly. "She gave it back to us. All of it." Clara whispered, "Then we did it, didn't we?" Daniel nodded. "No, Clara. She did." Closure. The next morning, sunlight poured into the estate as the sound of laughter echoed through the halls, not from servants or guests, but from children. The Ward Hale Foundation had opened its first children's academy right on the property, Evelyn's final wish fulfilled. Daniel watched from the balcony, hands in pockets, the wind brushing against his face. He whispered softly, "You never wanted us to inherit your empire, Mom. You wanted us to understand it." He turned, smiling faintly. "And we finally do." The camera lingers on Evelyn's portrait, her eyes glowing in morning light. Fade out. Title card. The billionaire's mother hid a secret fortune, and she left behind something far more valuable: conscience.